Can you hear me? Can I hear you?
Can you hear me? Cool. Also, there was a big lightning behind you. That was crazy.
I know. It's a really bad storm. You can probably hear it.
That's so, honestly, like sometimes that's a nice vibe.
It's pretty loud. Yeah, my brother texts me. He goes, "Holy thunderstorm, Batman."
Yeah.
Thanks, Billy.
Cute.
It's funny. All right, enough fucking with what I look like. I don't care.
So we're switching gears a little bit. Going back to stuff that we were talking about kind of like in the beginning of the pod, even though this is episode 6. So it's like we're still in the beginning of the pod. But we're going back to talking about progressing our career. And one of the ways that we've seen a lot of career growth is by having solid relationships with our managers. And LOL, ew, like relationships, but you kind of have to work on them for it to be beneficial. And so the person who's put in charge of you, quote unquote, isn't magically going to click with you and know how to manage you. Just like you're not really sure how they want to manage you. I know for myself, like even though I talk about having an amazing relationship with my manager right now, when I first started at Alice, like I was skeptical. Like I didn't think that MK was gonna, I don't know what I thought, but I was skeptical that I was gonna have another bad manager or another manager or a manager that I had never dealt with in a bad way. I'm just like, I don't know how much this person knows about what I want to know. And then I was proven that MK knows a fuck ton about all of it. So that was great. But I wanted her to prove to me that she was legit and like how to manage a person and how to manage a team. And she really did. MK like really stepped up to the plate, but I feel like she stepped up to the challenge. Yeah. Challenge.
But there's always kind of something to be said on the manager side of that manager and managee relationship. It needs to be both ways. It's a two-way street. Having been on the other side of that, like I can attest to how much managers actually don't know about like their managees if like we don't tell them. Straight up, like they cannot read our minds. And it's important to remember that like they have priorities for their role on top of you being their priority, on top of your priorities. And it's like, it's very meta, like all of it, but they have a shit ton to do. And it's like, just serve it. Like you have to serve the relationship up to them in a way that is easy for them to kind of like volley back. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to build that relationship with your manager and why it's on both of you to do so.
Hey, intro music.
So I think in order to talk about what makes a good manager-managee relationship, we have to talk about what makes a bad one. So Sarah, you're up.
I don't think I've had like the worst managers ever in B2B. Can't say a lot about the manager that was at the Burgers Bagels in Lexington, Massachusetts in 2011. Joanne, not amazing. But just like everyone doesn't learn the same way in school, not everyone is motivated and managed in the same way either. And I think bad managers will just treat all of their direct reports the same. But I think also bad direct reports won't hold their managers accountable for teaching them. But the manager still has to be like, both parties need to be open and willing to learn from the other. And I think that's a big thing with bad managers is their ego really gets in the way of having like a two-way relationship with their direct reports. I think that's when your one-on-ones are only tactical. Like you don't talk about the strategic direction of your career. They want to get nitpicky into what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're delivering it for the next whatever. I think it also shows up in just like people dread team meetings with that manager. I think it also shows up in parts of the organization having like a different view of the manager versus that manager's direct reports. I think that there's just a lot of ego that can get in the way on both sides if neither party or one party isn't willing to make the relationship mutually beneficial. Because like, I know that I'm never not going to know everything. I know that like my 12-year-old cousin, he's not 12, he's in 7th grade. My cousin who's going into 7th grade is like gonna be more successful than me. Like, his mom is the director of engineering at Google and his dad is a med device inventor. He's an inventor. He invents medical devices. Like, are you kidding me? So like, obviously Jonathan's going to be more successful than I am in life, but I can't wait to learn from him. I think that's a thing of just like, if you think that everyone who's younger than you is dumber than you, then you're not going to be a very good manager.
Yeah. I think that ego piece you were talking about is a really scary thing. And I think that it also like has a trickle down effect, but also like think about how that person, like your manager, if he has like they have a huge ego, like they're going to be hard to work with internally as well. Like who says that they're a good employee to their manager? Like, that's pretty scary. But I do think that it's one of those easy things that's like easy to pick up on in interviews.
I was listening to the Jocko podcast this morning. I got really into the Jocko podcast. I've listened to like 7. And he was talking about how in order to motivate teams, finding a common enemy that's internal is a cop-out. Like, that's an easy sort of
it happens.
way.
It happens all the time.
And it's lazy and it's easy to do because it's easier to find a common enemy that you all know the name of versus finding a new way to innovate your team, which is obviously going to, to not innovate your team, but to inspire your team and to like excite your team and motivate your team. And that's really hard to do when a really easy default is just like, let's hate this person, or like, let me be the asshole for these people so that they all band against me and they are tighter as a team. But if they're tighter as a team, but they hate the person that they're working towards, then they're not going to hit the goals that the person who's in charge is setting for them. It's easy to use that as the only motivation for your team, but it's not the most effective way to motivate your team.
Yeah, that's toxic as shit. Like, that's where you get people, and I think that becomes like a ripple effect. If you normalize hating anybody within your company, but it also like creates the assumption that it's okay to go do that again and again and again. And it's just like, then you start looking around and you're like, I don't like anybody that I work with because nobody likes each other. Yeah. It's terrible. I don't know how we got on that tangent, but
it was 4 tangents from me. That's my B. I connected 4 tangents.
I loved it. I was just sitting back and watching you.
The vein is popping out of my forehead right
now. But I think that what all of us can agree is that like bad managers at the like root of it just don't seem to care. And I don't know that it's actually that they don't care, because they wouldn't have been in that role in the first place. Like, they wouldn't have been chosen to be a manager, hired. Like, think about people that come in as managers. Like, that's a crazy, like, I can't even think about that. Like, every instance that I've had being promoted was into management. It was never like, we're hiring you to manage people. I can't wait for that life stage, because what? Like, I don't even want to think about that.
Well, Jocko has a great episode on it in case you want it. But I think
this is now a Jocko podcast.
This is a Jocko podcast Stan account. But he has just a very no ego way about leadership, in that if you are brought in to be a manager, to be a leader, like, the first thing you do is like, you stand back. Like, you stand back. He uses a lot of like army.
Sarah, you're giving away the end of this, and I didn't even listen to that podcast. Those are my own thoughts.
We know, but I think that's kind of the case. I had a thought like this right when I started, or right when I was leaving Drift and going to Alice, of just like, I am entering a new company and I'm not going to execute in the first 30 days. Like, I don't even know what I would execute on. I have absolutely zero context. I don't know what the team's working on, and I won't be able to bring like my whole self to whatever it is that I would want to execute on in the first 30 days anyway, because I saw leadership come in and not stand back and try and take control immediately and it ends up being more work for everyone, because they start bringing up ideas and topics that you already decided weren't going to work. They ask questions that could have been answered in any of the processes or any of the documents that are written about the thing that they were. And so
you need context. You can't just walk in somewhere and decide that's just like it's the same thing as the ego. You walk in thinking like, I know better than all of these people that have worked here for even somebody that's worked there for 3 days knows more than you. It doesn't matter what level you are, right? Like, maybe we need to do a whole other podcast on that, just like how to enter a company with grace. Because
honestly, that sounds like
shit's
really
hard. We should do that.
We should do that.
Okay,
I'll put that down. Asana, add it to Asana. Okay, so that was a big old rant on what makes bad managers. So let's talk about how we start building a good relationship from the very beginning. What do good managers look like, and what should you look for in a good manager and in a good managee? Both.
Let's just go with it. Let's go with both.
What are good managers looking for in a good managee? That was the question that you wrote.
Correct.
I'm gonna start over. Okay. So we talked a lot about what a bad manager looks like, and also how a direct report can kind of make a bad manager worse, to be honest. Bridget, the all-knowing manager on this podcast, in this room.
My less than 1 year of management experience.
Bridget knows the most about managing in this Zoom room. So I don't know how the sentences are. What do good managers look for in good managees? What are good managers looking for? Oh.
It's fine.
Become someone who's like good.
Yeah. How do you
manage?
Okay. Of course your manager is gonna like want you to like them. I think that people get that wrong. Some people like, say like, I don't give a fuck if
model. I'm not here to make friends.
Yeah, but like, of course you want to like the people on your team and the people on your team to like you. Like, that's the whole part of a company culture piece of an interview. Like, you can't just, whatever. So I just think it's hilarious that people are like, I don't care if my people like me. I just want to get the job done. And I'm like, well, okay, don't want to work for you. But I'd always
if I worked for you, I wouldn't get the job done.
Yeah. It also makes me think of Michael Scott when he was like, they ask him like, would you rather be feared or loved? And he's like, easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. Like, yes, it's so perfect. Michael Scott is the best boss. Actually, he's a terrible boss.
Worst boss. I'm glad you changed that, because I would be like,
no, he's a bad boss. I don't even know if he's a good guy, but funny. So we'll take it.
Yeah.
But for me, what I do to kind of like start a good relationship with my direct manager is like, I just share a lot about myself and like probably overshare to the point where they're like, this girl is actually crazy. Like, I don't know if we made the right decision. But yeah, I just am like super open, I think, with my manager, but I think that I'm like that with everybody on my team, and even like people that I meet for the first time on LinkedIn. I'm just kind of like, here's all my shit. Like, this is what I like to do. When you are open with them, like you said earlier, like they're waiting to see how much of you you're going to bring to work. Right. Yeah. So they never want to be the first one that's like, so do you have a boyfriend? Like, what are you doing this weekend? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're not going to ask you that stuff first. Like, they're going to kind of like wait for you to show some kind of give before they decide that they're like, okay, like I can give back. Because some people don't want to have like a super tight, like you were saying earlier that the bad managers just kind of manage everybody the same, but like everybody's different. We're all different as employees. And I think that you just have a better opportunity to be closer to your manager, like professionally, if you can personally like kind of connect with them.
I think that's not obvious, because obviously I don't do that. My first few managers at Drift didn't know anything about my personal. None of my managers at Drift knew anything about my personal life. I didn't share it though. Our conversations were strictly just like work.
Yeah.
MK's the first boss who knows that I have a boyfriend, knows his name, knows like his interests as well as my interests, knows about my relationship with my sisters, because I lived with my sister for the first part of working at Alice, like all these things. And it's honestly because she asked. Right. As a direct report, like I'm not gonna be like, so this weekend, like my little sister's gonna give me a stick and poke in my living room.
We're different, because I totally would say that.
But instead, like I posted it on Instagram because it's fucking adorable. It's and cute. My manager asked me about it in our one-on-one today. She was like, looks like you got a new tattoo. I was like, yeah, my little sister did it. And she was like, sorry, what? And I was like, yeah, she's a nurse, so we trust her with needles and our bodies. But like shit like that, where it takes a lot of energy and time to care about a person. And if you aren't willing to do that, I don't know if you should manage people. Like my dad has been in his field for longer than I've been alive, and we have deep combos about career shit because my sisters won't talk to him about it, so he wants to chat with someone. And he's like, I have to deal with so much of my own shit. I couldn't manage a team where I then also have to worry about their shit. And I'm like, that is mad self-aware. Like, I really appreciate that. But I think
people are not that self-aware though.
I know.
There's like a whole mix of things. Like we talked about this with our managers when we did that episode. Like they said like it's totally fine to not want to be an individual, or to not want to be a manager and just want to be an individual contributor. But we as an industry, and I think every industry, like really glorifies a people manager. And when you say I'm a manager of people, like it carries a different weight than like I'm a principal or I'm a senior specialist at this. But we talked about it a little bit. We touched on like when you're really good at your job, they're going to want to put you into management so that you teach other people how to do what you know how to do. So I think that part of that piece where like maybe people are self-aware of like they don't want to be in management, but that's the only way that they think that they can progress their career. And that just sucks because it's just not true.
Yeah. Like I wish I had any advice for them, but I'm like, my advice is like, don't, because you're not going to be happy and your direct reports aren't going to be happy.
My advice is tell your manager that, but then also go find a mentor that's doing what you want to be doing. Like, I don't even know what that looks like because I know that I just want to be back in people management. But I don't know. Like that's a whole other thing that I don't even know how to even tackle.
Yeah, both of us want to be people managers. But talking to my dad and him knowing that he could make more money as a manager, but mentally being like, he's already, like everyone already has a lot to work on mentally. Like taking on other people's baggage as your own baggage when you are really good as a manager and actively want to care. Because my dad's also a teacher, like he's a professor, adjunct professor at colleges. Like he wants to teach people. He wants to watch them like grow and progress. And so like he would be such a good manager, but like he legitimately can't.
But like good for him to just decide. I wish that I knew what that felt like. Right. I wish that I didn't want to take on the burdens of other, like, I wish that I didn't. I think that this kind of goes back to like, when I was managing people at G2, like you were saying that you weren't super open. We kind of all were because we were all the same age and we were all like hanging out together on the weekends and like whatever. So I think that's where I really learned to like share everything about myself at work, because I just knew that the people were very similar to me and we liked to do the same things and all of that. at big time, everybody on my team is around the same age, and like that's awesome. I still though feel like I have to kind of like overshare of just, you know what, I'm just gonna go there. Since March, my personal life is just so up and down, and it's like I think everybody's is, and I'm just okay saying that out loud because I'm not scared of it, and I'm like doing things proactively to help me not feel like this. Yeah. But I have to communicate that to my manager because I get frustrated when I'm up and down. Like I don't know how he's reading those signals or what my face in a meeting is saying or like whatever. It's really never anything about work, but like I don't want him to have to guess. So that's why I overshare. It's like I just don't want him to ever have to guess what's going on. So I just tell him.
Yeah, I think I wait until like something's going on and then I say. I think I'm getting better. Like towards the end of working at Drift, there was a new manager, like head of digital, and I really wish that I got to work with her longer because she seems really freaking cool. And I could feel that we were talking more about, I think it was, she was younger. Like my previous manager to her was like a mother of 3 who was 15 plus years into her career. Like we didn't have a lot in common.
It's hard.
And like, I don't want to share with someone who, I don't want my like quote unquote petty personal life things to be brought up with a 40-something woman.
Right. That totally
like,
makes
I'm cool
sense.
with like a late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, whatever. If you have really great skin.
Oh, that's amazing.
Like knowing about my personal life, because I feel like there's like they can get it a little bit more.
Right.
I also have a very particular vocabulary and like to make up words or use like a lot of slang, and if you just like can't follow along with what I'm saying as like a 25-year-old shithead, then I'm not gonna try. Like, and I know that, and I can sense when that sort of like nonsense is good, and when it's just like we're not gonna add that to this conversation. We're gonna sit with our hands crossed.
I'm gonna leave off the I'm gonna leave that one off.
It's just like, can I respond to yeet in all caps when they ask me for something? Like, is that a yes or a no?
The answer is yes in your head sometimes.
I'm just like, yeet.
Oh man. Yeah, I started to reach outside my team for things, just kind of scary. But fun fact, GIFs are a universal language because even if they don't understand the like pop culture behind the specific ones,
they get it.
The sentiment is still there. They can read like what I typed in to like get there. So it's good. Anyways, okay, so one-on-ones are the perfect time to literally get your manager one-on-one. Like that's why they're called that. Tell me more about like your one-on-ones and how that usually goes with MK.
Yeah, we have good ass one-on-ones. I've spoken about it publicly a few times just because like they're good vibes, they're good times, and it's a really good mix of strategic and tactical. And I think that's what needs to be done. I think I have had managers in the past that are like, yes, every month we'll dedicate a one-on-one to your professional growth. And then we would get so caught up in the tactical necessities that we would never get to that strategic conversation. And then like review season would come and I wouldn't know what I needed to do to progress to the next level. Sure. And then I wouldn't because I didn't know.
Shocker how that works.
I know, it's really crazy. But at the same time, like it's on me to make sure that every month we have that strategic one-on-one. Like you put time on or whatever happens, time is put on your calendar with your manager. You need to make sure that you are getting the most of it. So I think that the manager needs to be like open and willing to talk about anything, whether that's tactical, whether that's strategic, whether that's letting you in on what they talk about in the board meeting or the senior leadership meeting or the executive leadership meeting. Like any any questions that you have about the business, like, should be able to be addressed in these one-on-ones. But you as the direct report need to come to those one-on-ones prepared, because your manager isn't going to make small talk with you. Their time is valuable. They probably have like 1,000,007 things to do, and they have that 30 or 45 or 60-minute long period of time to make sure that you are getting your questions answered. So like, you need to structure your one-on-ones, and you don't need to make like a quadrant where it has your quarterly goals in the top right, and then what you're working on, what you worked on last week, and then what you're doing this week, and then your challenges. Like, you don't need to structure it like that, but you do need to come with talking points, questions, wins, challenges, and be like, hey, like, I just want to let you know, I'm not sure if you saw this, but I did this, pretty proud of it, but I want to see if you have any feedback on it, because I want to do more stuff like this. Or like, hey, I'm working on this thing and I'm really struggling with, like, for example, this week I like put together this whole spiff, and I was like, this is so exciting, like, these people are going to kind of like help me hit this goal. Crickets. Straight up crickets, which was on me, because I should have like organized the spiff a little bit better, presented it in a different way. But I also was working with like a rather risk-averse group of people who aren't really motivated by competition, because they're motivated by making sure that they don't fuck up. And so that was something that I brought to my one-on-one today. I was like, I don't want to like start like hyping up this group every day and being like, come on, like, no one's done anything, like, no, like, let's go, how can I help? Because I know that that's not going to help. Asking vague questions like, how can I help, isn't going to help. How would you suggest that I motivate this group of people to help me like do this thing? And so then we had a conversation about that. It wasn't like tactically, how do I make sure that this team like does this? It was more so like, how do I motivate a group of people who aren't motivated by a spiff, which is crazy. Who doesn't want free shit? I will do anything for like $5 for like a $5 thing. I'm like, I will heads down freaking do it. But how do I motivate people who are different from me, like X, Y, and Z? And that's also that was like a skill that I would want to possess as a manager as well. Like, how can I motivate a team that's not necessarily pumped up by everything? So I think you can but like, TLDR, hit my microphone, TLDR, you need to come prepared to your one-on-ones, and it's on you to have those strategic conversations, to have the tactical conversations, and to make sure that you're holding your manager accountable for being able to answer the questions that you have as well.
Yeah, mine are also like kind of a mix of tactical and strategic. I obviously always start with my personal shit, because have you met me?
We start with our personal shit now too. Like, I'm chaos.
It's just like nice, like, how are you doing? Like, what did you do? Ours are on Tuesdays, so I'm like,
ours are on Tuesdays.
Yeah, Tuesday talks about the podcast. It's always super nice.
It's really cute.
Yeah. So, but then I like talk about, this is also the first like real job that I've had, or company that I've worked at, that everything is a little bit more week to week than you would think. And like, that's cool. Like, that's totally fine. I'm just still getting used to that. So I do like talk about, this is what I'm working on this week. This is what I carried over, but it's never like, it's not like, okay, for this 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about this. And then for this 5 minutes, I just kind of run through everything. That is also the time that I would highly, highly suggest. Like, here's the thing. We all are slacking all the time, right? Like, I'm slacking my boss at least every day. I mean, probably multiple times a day, which is like, hey, I saw this thing somewhere, I need you to explain it to me, or had this thought. But if there's something that like you really want to be working on, or like you see a need for something, like, don't send that in a Slack. Like, maybe bring that to your one-on-one, because A, it's probably not super pressing, and B, it's so much better to kind of like have context around it, like see that you're excited about it, like have them ask live questions and you guys like work through that together. I think is so much more organic, and it's gonna kind of lean the way that you want it to, of like, you actually get to go work on that thing, because they're gonna remember that you brought it up, right? Because you
love
a face-to-face conversation, Zoom to Zoom conversation.
I think that's really important, just because for people who are like me, who like have an idea and then think that if they don't write it down and send it to someone immediately, it'll run out of your brain forever. So that's incorrect. But write it down for yourself. But then also, like, take a step back, go for a walk, eat lunch, go to the bathroom, drink a whole glass of water,
about those
whatever.
Things.
And, like, elaborate on it. Because if you bring something vague to your one-on-one, like, your manager has to do more work to understand what you want. Like, be a good direct report.
No, seriously.
Be a good person.
There's so many times when I'll, like, throw out a random idea, or I'll catch myself doing that. And I'm like, Bridget, you don't even know what that means. How are they going to understand what that means? Like, you're just doing it to do it. You need to, like, write things down and then come back to them a couple of times and really understand, like, where that fits in, because your job is to fit it in. Like, it's not your manager's job to tell you where it goes. It's not your manager's job to tell you how to connect the teams together with it, or, like, how to, what channel to use it in, whatever it is. But, like, the more full of like, the fuller a picture that you can paint. Is that the phrase? Full picture?
Paint a full picture? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You're good.
Painting pictures. The more likely they are that you will be able to work on it, and, like, they'll be there to just kind of, like, walk you through maybe a little bit more of what you've been missing. But
yeah,
we digress. The last 5 minutes, I usually just, like, ask him, like, is there anything that you need from me? And sometimes he says no, and sometimes he's like, yes, all of these things. So
great. I like that question too, because that makes it a two-sided relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So what else can direct reports do to help our managers out? Like asking them how we can help at the end of our one-on-ones. Like, there's that two-way street thing we were talking about. Like, we expect them to give us stuff, but we also should be out there, like, making their job easier. Like, that's how you get on their good side. That's how you get promoted, is, like, you anticipate the needs of your manager.
Mm-hmm.
Before we hear your tips, one thing that Dan did to his past manager, like, I'm pretty sure he still does it, was he would look at their calendars and see, like, what big meetings were coming up, like presenting to senior leadership about goals and whatever, and he would message his manager before the meeting, like a few days before the meeting, when he knew that his manager was preparing for that meeting, to be like, hey, I pulled this for the SLT meeting.
Yeah, like, that's baller.
Yeah, he's a good ass direct report.
Yeah, that's good job, Dan.
Good job, Dan.
Here. So I think the obvious one here is to be able to, like, function without them in a way that is, like, healthy, and you need to be able to talk, like, openly with your team, like, whether they're in the Slack channel, not in the Slack channel, like, your bosses or not. Like, you have to have a working relationship with your coworkers, and it's easy for, like, a team like us. We're 4 people, right? And we're all very similar, so that's easy, like, opening that full line of communication for the entire team. But so many times, like, we make our bosses the bottlenecks, where I'm like, okay, I need this from X and Z, and then you need to get that to her, and then it comes around, and it's just like, no, go directly to that person. Only involve your boss, like, when it's at the finish line or at the beginning. Like, don't try not to involve them in things that they don't need to be involved in, just because you don't want to talk to your coworker or, like, ask them for things. And I'm bad at asking my coworkers for things, and Sara has said before that she is too. But, like, that's something that makes it easier on our boss. So that's something I have to get over, of just, like, I have to go directly to the product team, directly to sales. Like, I don't have to go through Jason to, like, get my work done most of the time. Like, I think more than not, I'm asking him for, like, guardrails and trying to, like, forge the path by myself. But, like, I do checks to see, like, am I still in my lane? Like, literally, am I still on the right track here? But by doing this and, like, going out and kind of, like, getting the information that you need without that person, like, you gain trust really quickly that way. You gain a lot of, like, autonomy in your job, but it also, like, makes you super easy to collaborate with, because guess what? Then people are going to come back and ask you for things, and then it just creates, like, this whole, like, just good cycle of goodness. I don't know. It's very empowering. Yeah.
It's that indirect leadership part that we were talking about that I'll probably cut out of this, but whatever, we're going to do an episode on indirect leadership, but it's that thing of you can execute an end-to-end project without having to have your manager delegate for you. You're doing the delegation. You're able to like work through others, ask them for things, like etc. Even though you have absolutely no power, like title-wise or hierarchy-wise, over those people. It's really hard, especially when you're new, because you don't want to be like, hey, can you do this for me? But I think positioning it like, I think it's anticipating what you're going to need. So not acting immediately.
Yeah.
Things that I'm telling myself. Don't act immediately. Write down everything that you need. Like involve everyone who needs to be involved and invite them to like a kickoff if you want to have a kickoff, or ask them for help instead of asking them to do something. Like, hey, can you help me with this thing?
Yeah.
There are like different ways where you can phrase your questions and your needs to have it be, I'm gonna quote Jocko again.
Oh my God.
He has so many good things to say. But
amazing.
It's you subordinate yourself to the other person by like playing up their ego. So it's like, hey, you're really good at this thing. Like, I don't really have that sort of knowledge. Like, can you help me execute on this thing? Then they're like, I am good at that thing. And then they're like, yeah, definitely. I would love to be able to show you how much I know about that one thing.
Yeah. But so then that also, again, opens the line of communication for like them to do that back to you. Like there are things that you are better at than, you know what I mean? Like by you doing that first. I think the moral of this whole podcast episode has been like,
just go listen to Jocko's podcast. And you don't have to listen to ours.
Number one, do that. Number two, like make the first move.
Yeah.
Like don't be scared to make the first move when it comes to your work relationships and like maybe your other relationships. Who knows?
Yeah, like we don't want to pry. Okay. Bridget, what's in your fridge right now? What cheese are we eating?
I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I have some very sad news.
No!
I have no cheese in my fridge. I did a grocery haul today, and I'm really trying to cut out dairy for like 2 weeks to see if my face like clears up, because I have like this whole mask thing happening. And it's not a place that I want to be. So we have to give up the cheese for 2 weeks and see what happens.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I mean, I can tell you still what I made for dinner tonight, and I wanted to put cheese on it. Does like that count?
Yes.
I started looking up like recipes for some of my favorite salad places, like Sweetgreen, that like why I now know why that salad that I like there costs $13. It's because I bought all the things that are in it, and I'm like, oh, okay. But it's just like, it's the guacamole greens one. It's like avocado and lots of veggies, avocado, red bell pepper, tomatoes. The star of the show though. So like the one from the restaurant has a cojita. I think it's cojita. I don't know. Cheese, it's Mexican cheese on it. But I obviously didn't do that. But the star of the show is the cilantro lime jalapeno dressing. And we made it without sugar. So it's a good day.
Fuck it up.
Yeah. Feeling good about it.
Is that journey for you?
What about you? What's in your fridge?
So I went to a small Friendsgiving, and by that I mean it was me and Dan and then a girl who I see every week because we go boxing together, and her boyfriend. So
cute.
It was us.
Love that.
And I made a charcuterie plate.
Yes.
In the shape of a turkey.
What? Wait.
Now, because of that, I have Gouda and French brie and cheddar all up in my fridge.
Just make a second. That's honestly maybe the better part. Like the charcuterie board is huge from like big energy the first time.
Big energy.
But it's really nice to have the leftovers from a charcuterie board too.
For sure. Yeah, because then you can just like pile all the shit together and just like.
We love a shark board.
Don't be a bad manager. Don't be a bad direct report. I almost said stay sexy and don't get murdered.
Oh my God. Yeah, you just be a good person, and like your manager should be a good person, and then everything works out. So make sure your manager is a good person before you go work for them.
Okay. Love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye.